We know the strength of a city is determined by how we treat the most vulnerable. And so we choose to be a strong city. We can do both, Chicago, and we can all thrive together. And we can all thrive together.
Well, if you've been paying attention to the news, you have heard that Chicago has a $538 million deficit. Let me say that again. A $534 million deficit under Mayor Brandon Johnson. Not completely responsible for that deficit. However, 20% of that deficit is due specifically to his handling of the migrant crises of all of the individuals being shipped to Chicago from border states like Texas, coming up here on buses from Governor Greg Abbott. And I don't know if most of you know, but I also co-host a radio show here locally on terrestrial radio in Chicago. And on Friday, we had 2 aldermen on our program on Friday, and we had the opportunity to ask them some questions about how the crisis is being handled. We had Alderman Jeanette Taylor, who was on the show, and I asked her a very simple question. Mayor Johnson has asked Chicagoans to make a sacrifice for the migrants, for this migrant crisis. And when I asked Alderman Taylor, what are her thoughts about the sacrifices that Mayor Johnson is asking the citizens of Chicago to make? Oh, why don't you just take a minute and listen for yourself? When Mayor Brandon Johnson comes out and says everyone needs to make a sacrifice for people who are not citizens, what's your opinion of that?
So we're a sanctuary city, right? That's something that the city voted on. That's something even Mayor Harold Washington wanted. And so we do need to take care of everybody. Interesting
response. We do need to take care of everyone. I just can't get over, and I just have to go on record for saying it. I left the Democratic Party. I'm not a Republican, but the Democrats are really making it difficult for anyone to take them seriously. And this is just an example. I followed up that question and I asked, why doesn't the city of Chicago just revoke its sanctuary status at the Chicago level? Why don't the aldermen just say, hey, we're not going to be a sanctuary city anymore because it's costing too much money at the expense of Chicagoans and at the expense of U.S. citizens? Here's her answer. Why don't the aldermen of the city of Chicago just revoke that status?
I can't tell you why, but like somebody just said to me, we're bad at it. We're not good. This situation is not working. So something is going to have to give. And so I've said to this administration, how do we stop the buses? Because we're getting 3 and 4 a day.
I can't see that happening. I mean, Alderman Taylor is saying that 2 to 3 buses per day are coming to Chicago from southern border states. This is not tenable. This is not something that we can continue to abide. The money is not there. We already have a $534 million budget shortfall. That's over $500 million. So then we had a second alderman on, Alderman Vasquez, and he also sits on the board that deals with migrant issues and with immigrant issues. And I asked him flat out, how can he look in the eyes of his constituents, people who voted for him to deal with their issues? How can he look his voters in the face while also asking them to continue to pay more money in the form of taxes to take care of non-US citizens. And guess what he said?
We're talking about the cost of putting up these tents and then feeding, housing, clothing, sending children to school, medical attention. And the underlying assumption is, hey, it's going to be a cold winter in Chicago, so we've got to get this temporary housing up. Can't leave these people in the police stations, and we certainly can't leave them on the streets. Quick question, as far, from a monetary perspective, it's warmer where they came from, and it's cheaper to ship, to just put them on a plane and fly them back. Why is that not an option?
Yeah, because people are people. And rather than being some of the red states who don't seem to think about people as humans, here in Chicago, we don't do that.
Alderman Vasquez followed up in his answer and basically just said there is no upper limit, that we have to take care of everyone. Just like Alderman Taylor said, we have to take care of anyone in the United States, regardless to the cost and regardless to their status as a U.S. citizen. So think about that for a minute. We have elected individuals in this country who are saying that the rights of non-U.S. citizens are equal to the rights of non-U.S. citizens. So I mentioned to the alderman that I was actually driving on my way to the radio show the other day on Friday, and I went to a local restaurant, and as I was driving back to the studio, this is what I saw. So if you pay attention, I'm showing you that I'm at the corner of Des Plaines Street and Roosevelt Road. And right on that intersection, right in the heart of downtown Chicago, I'm driving back to the radio station, and this is what I see. There are 20 plus tents on the side of the expressway with U.S. citizens living there. So think about that for a moment. Just think about that for a moment, that the city of Chicago, that the Brandon Johnson administration is allocating over $100 million to take care of migrants when there are U.S. citizens. They're talking about putting tents up this winter because they don't want these migrants to sleep on the streets in the Chicago winter. What about the Chicagoans? What about the U.S. citizens who are in those tents on the side of the expressway? I simply assert that it is the humane thing to have an asylum program. That's fine, but we have finite resources in terms of money, in terms of time, in terms of personnel. We have to put U.S. citizens first. This isn't an America First Trump type of rhetoric that I'm spewing. I'm simply saying that we have to put American citizens first, and then after we've put American citizens first, then we can have a conversation about any additional capacity that exists to help non-U.S. citizens, migrants. We have to take care of U.S. citizens first. That's period, end of story. We have to take care of American citizens and Chicagoans first. We want to hear from you. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this. I think that, and I told the alderman as much, that if the Brandon Johnson administration continues on this path, he is not going to get reelected.
I would admonish, and I hope Mayor Johnson is listening. He's not going to get a second term if he continues to push this agenda. Republicans will take over Chicago in a landslide because citizens in Chicagoans are not going to stand for this. Again, like, comment, subscribe, share the show. We appreciate you for watching. This is the David Seaton Show.